ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to McLaughlin Middle School, and thank you to Jake Swamp and the Pine. Now, I am pleased to introduce Letty Lopez, field organizer for the Manchester area for Bernie 2020.
Good evening, everyone. How's being inside from the cold? Hope it's much better. My name is Letty, and I'm honored to be here with you all this evening. I'm one of the field organizers with Bernie 2020 here in Manchester. I come from an immigrant background. Both of my parents are from Mexico. My dad arrived early in his life and earned his permanent residency in 1986. My mom immigrated years later and submitted her proper paperwork to also become a permanent resident. However, our broken immigration system had different ideas. After waiting years for an appointment with the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, my mom was denied re-entry into the US and was given a 10-year bar. If you don't know what that means, it means being banned from entering the United States. It means being separated from your children, from your partner, from your family, from your community, until USCIS decides if you are worthy of re-entering the US or maybe not at all. October 26, 2019 came and went, but my mom is still not here with us. And I still can't tell you how long that will take. That marked the completion of her 10-year bar. And we still have to wait until we can reunite with her here. Until here in the country, my mom sacrificed everything for. In the country, I have been fighting to ensure no other family is separated, no other individual is torn away from their loved ones, no other person has to wait years to find out if they are granted permanent residency, asylum, or temporary protected status, where DACA recipients no longer have to live with uncertainty in their lives, where I am advocating for a pathway to citizenship to ensure we no longer live in fear or in the shadows. I trust Bernie Sanders to fight for all immigrants as president because he has been advocating for our immigrant brothers and sisters for decades and will fight to create an inclusive America for us all. With just 3 weeks left until this crucial first in the nation primary here in New Hampshire, millions of our fellow citizens and immigrant neighbors are counting on us to pave the way for this political revolution. And the most effective way to ensure this is to reach voters by canvassing, knocking on doors, having face-to-face conversations. You are the ones we need to get involved to build a strong movement led by the people. We need your help to create a truly grassroots political revolution and make history for our country. So please join me and countless others in making sure we do everything in our power to make Bernie Sanders our next president of the United States. This is a call to action for all of you to join us tomorrow for a special canvas launch with Naomi, Klein, and Molly Crabapple at our Manchester field office in the East Side Plaza, located at 853 Hanover Street. Thank you.
Please welcome Constituency Director in the New Hampshire Political Department, Suraj Budathoki.
Wow, what a crowd. Are you ready to welcome our next president? Yeah. Before we do that, let me do this. My name is Suraj Budathoki. I am proud to say that I am a former refugee from Bhutan. And I am a constituency director here at Senator Sanders' campaign in New Hampshire. At the age of 9, I became a victim of ethnic cleansing in Bhutan and survived refugee lives for the next 19 years in refugee camps in Nepal. Fleeing to the unknown Hoping for the best was my family's only goal when our lives were at risk from our government. No one chooses to leave their neighbors, the only country they know and love, and where they lived for generations, and set out on a dangerous journey out of that country unless their life is at risk. My dad got a death threat from the government. We left our home overnight. We barely had time to collect our belongings. As a child, I remember my parents would return home from the forest with little wild plants to eat, and sometimes empty-handed. I slept many nights without food. I slept on the wet floor when I was sick. My dad barely had any money to take me to the hospital or buy much-needed medication. I lost many of my childhood friends due to a cholera outbreak. Luckily, I was saved on God's will. I drank from farm canal where cows and pigs used to play. The villagers used to wash their clothes in the same water. Basic needs for life were not met. Clean water, medical services, better education, jobs were all my daydreams. 2009 brought hope and enthusiasm in my life. I was given an opportunity to leave the refugee camp after 19 years and come to this country, for which I always had special admiration in my heart. I had the impression that America is synonymous with abundance, equality, well-funded schools, affordable education, good-paying jobs, no corruption, no poverty, and affordable health insurance and medication. Most importantly, that it was a society founded on the belief in justice, freedom, and equality among people, and helping each other when needed. Within 2 months of my arrival, my poorly informed impression met with reality. Well, I got a job that paid only $7.25 per hour. As this was unsustainable, I added one more full-time position with the same hourly wage. My curiosity to learn more about America made me attend several town halls, meetings, and rallies like this in New Hampshire. Now, without any doubt in my mind, I can tell you that there are two Americas. One that is comprised of people who work hard every day but struggle to meet their needs, those who cannot afford much-needed medicines, those who cannot send children to college, those who cannot find housing or even clean drinking water. And there is the other America of billionaires and corporations who have desires to accumulate unlimited wealth and are depleting our shared natural resources. They are poisoning our water system, crops, and lands. The gap between rich and poor is so big that only a political revolution can fix it. And this is political revolution. If a refugee boy from Bhutan can be part of this revolution that seeks to bring much needed change, then we all can be part of it. Emma Goldman once said, "If I can't dance to it, it is not my revolution." So to make it our revolution, our active involvement is must, and we must send Senator Sanders to the White House. Thank you.
Please welcome Executive Counselor for New Hampshire District 2 and candidate for governor, Andrew Volinsky.
Hey, so first, thanks to Letty and Suraj for sharing their stories. Thanks to Olivia for interpreting for us. I am Andrew Volinsky. I'm on the Executive Council, and I am running for governor. And it is my honor and privilege to stand here tonight and tell you I endorse for President Senator Bernie Sanders. I will tell you, it has been the damnedest couple of days for me. 2 days ago, I sat on death row in Georgia with my client of 30 years. We had had our last hearing and were waiting for the order and his execution, which was scheduled for 7 o'clock on Thursday night. And at 2 o'clock, 5 hours before the execution, the last opportunity, we got an order commuting his sentence. So as I sat in this makeshift visiting room in the Georgia prison on these plastic folding chairs with my client and his family and another couple of lawyers waiting for the order, because everyone knows I'm from New Hampshire, the topic turned to politics. And everyone wanted to know what's happening politically in New Hampshire. This is what's happening. And I said, before I tell you what's happening in New Hampshire, tell me who you support for president. And one by one, each and every one sitting with me said, I support Bernie Sanders. And the last one to speak was my client, Jimmy's mom, who's 75, works at Walmart, has never earned $15 an hour. And she said, I support Bernie Sanders because he will work for us. That is why I support Bernie Sanders. So whether you care about criminal justice, economic justice, environmental justice, labor justice, Bernie Sanders will work for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew Valinsky. Now please welcome to the stage Janice Kelby, Legislative Director of the American Postal Workers Union for New Hampshire. And
wow, Manchester, you've outdone yourself. To come out in this kind of weather shows me we have a winner. My name's Janice Kelby, and I am a mother, a grandmother, and a proud worker for the American Postal Workers Union. I've been a member for over 45 years, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of our local president, Dana Coletti, and the members of both our local union and the New Hampshire State Postal Workers. Before I talk about you, let me ask you something about yourself. How many of you in this room have ever worried about having to pay a bill, cover ordinary living expenses, or worried about the possibility of medical bills that you can't pay? Yeah, I'm pretty much guessing that it would be most of us. Have you ever noticed during this campaign how some people get a little squeamish when they start talking about redistribution of wealth when you talk about Bernie Sanders? Well, I have to tell you that kind of made me laugh if it wasn't so sad. I can guarantee you that Bernie Sanders is not looking to start redistribution of wealth. He can't, because it's already happening. The problem is all the wealth is going in the wrong direction. Bernie Sanders is going to work for all of us to put some of that money back into the pockets of the people who are creating that wealth. That doesn't sound scary to me. Does it sound scary to you? No. It also scares me that there's been a growing movement to make the working people of the United States pay the taxes while the CEOs and the corporations pay less or none. Yeah. CEO compensation skyrocketed since 1978, 940%. Workers' compensation during that same period, 12%. Now that scares me and it has to stop. Bernie is committed to making that stop. That's one of the reasons I'm here. I want to tell you that my union is committed to fighting for decent pay and benefits and safe workplace and dignity and respect on the job. We also strongly believe in social and economic justice for all working families. Long before Senator Sanders was running for president, back when they started doing a bunch of closing and consolidations for the post office, Senator Sanders held a town hall meeting in Vermont with more than 400 workers, community residents, veterans, and area business people to get together to talk about the impact of service changes. He recognized right away there were those looking to cherry pick the profitable parts of the Postal Service to stuff their own pockets while leaving rural areas and high crime areas to fend for themselves with no universal coverage and reduced delivery at higher prices. He left that meeting on a mission to maintain a thriving public post office, and he has not let up on that mission. He does it with the same passion that he fights for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. He's advocated for common sense ideas like postal banking. It's kind of one of the things I love about Bernie is it's such a win-win situation. He finds two problems and he understands the interconnectivity between the two. He aims to get rid of payday lenders and the predatory practices that they do by having some postal banking. It would be a win-win for everybody. He has long advocated, he's always walked with workers, advocating for family medical leave, livable wage, right to medical care for all, fair trade deals. I could go on and on. Fair scheduling practices, things that impact every one of us. His goal is to lift the middle class and those who are living in poverty. In keeping with the strong principles of my union, I am proud to announce to you that both the New Hampshire Postal Workers Union and Manchester Area Local 230 have voted to endorse Senator Bernie Sanders as the next President of the United States. Yes. Thank you. I have to give a really quick shout out too. I just learned 2 days ago that our sister union in Des Moines, Iowa, just 2 days ago, also voted to endorse Bernie Sanders. So yes to them. It's time for us to stand up and fight for a president that we know will stand up and fight for us. Let's do it.
Thank you, Janice and the American Postal Workers Union. Now, please welcome to the stage John Cusack, actor and campaign surrogate.
How you doing? Thanks for having me, New Hampshire. I'm really happy to be with you and to be a part of this Bernie Sanders movement. I'm sure you know that over 100 years ago, the great poet, while in New Hampshire, wrote of the road not taken. I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And I don't know if Robert Frost was talking about Bernie Sanders, but Bernie Sanders fits the bill. For over 40 years, Bernie Sanders has been a profound moral voice and a guide and a North Star and our hope, or progressive hope, in a world that is collapsing all around us. When I was a young man reading Howard Zinn and trying to consider and absorbing the epic struggle for civil rights that gave us some of the most magnificent political fighters and thinkers and writers of our time, you know, Martin Luther King, these great powerful legacies, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, Angela Davis, Dorothy Day and the Catholic Worker, Eugene Debs, the Berrigan brothers, public intellectuals like Noam Chomsky, who would later influence everybody from Public Enemy to The Clash. Yeah. Learning about the meaning and the legacy of FDR and the New Deal from my father because he lived it. And knowing that my father's generation was working for and waiting for the next movement to finally finish what FDR started. I mean, but it's been a long road. And but these were titanic ideas and figures. But in the public life, in the public sphere, it seemed their time had passed. And in the early 80s, it was a much more jingoistic time. Some of us old timers remember it. And it was pretty barren out there. But then this congressman named Bernie Sanders came on the scene, and he was beautiful, man. I mean, he was just beautiful. His voice was singular and unrelentingly powerful in its moral clarity. And he said all the things that cannot be said. And the guy was absolutely fearless. And I thought, here's a guy with the future in his eyes. I mean, this was a man with a deep and a powerful connection to the truth. And he's a person with remarkable courage who proclaimed the absolute need for justice, equality, and dignity for all people. And he offered a principled, visionary critique of American empire as a counter-narrative to the jingoism of the day. He publicly, loudly, boldly rejected the hideous lie that unchecked greed, the predatory greed of capitalism in all of its cruelty, was good. And that this greed was, in fact, the planet's only means of survival, that we must all bow allegiance to this ruling orthodoxy of Earth. Bernie kept telling us there was another, better way, and he kept telling the truth. But he told us what we needed to hear, not what we wanted to hear, because Bernie Sanders respects you. He respects us. When a person respects you, they tell you the truth. Sometimes the truth's not pleasant. Sometimes illusions can be seductive, but he was always unrelentingly honest. And as it is with truth tellers, he was often speaking this truth alone. Sometimes famously and literally a lone man in an empty chamber house, bearing witness for the victims of another war built and sold on lies. This was clearly a very special man. This was a man with vision. This was a man with the Holy Spirit in him. And this was a fighter with less quitting than anybody I've ever seen. And over these 40 years, he spoke, he worked, he organized, he would not go away. He made himself a most troublesome man for those in power. He was not obedient. He did not bow down to the almighty corporate dollar. And he never took that road more traveled. He never took the easier, softer way. That's not who the guy is. And it's just not. It's not in his DNA. And it occurred to some of us over these 40 years, this neoliberal period, it became clear that this guy was one of the true inheritors of the mantle of great American prophetic voices for justice in America. And he stands shoulder to shoulder with those in history who have been the moral conscience of our time. And like Dr. King, who we celebrate on Monday, Bernie Sanders voiced the forbidden connections between capitalism, imperialism, racism, sexism, yes, even global warming in the 80s, you can look it up, and the era of endless wars that he saw coming, and the war economies that Eisenhower warned about. And for these 40 years, we've endured class warfare from above. And for 40 years, Bernie Sanders was there fighting back. And you know what? For 4 decades, Bernie was right. Again and again and again. We have never, ever, ever in our lifetime had a candidate who will do more for working people than Bernie Sanders. We don't need a further winnowing out process. We know who the most progressive person is. It's Bernie Sanders. We have the candidate. We have never, ever in our lifetimes had a truer champion of social, economic, and climate justice this close to the White House. It's the truth. So don't sleepwalk through the miracle. This guy's been a profile of courage and clarity and consistency for 40 years. But it's important to know that his critique of this 40-year neoliberal period was right and true. His prophetic warnings have come to pass. Sadly, the planet is faltering in the face of relentless corporate plunder, and billionaires are tightening their stranglehold on public policy, and violence and fascism is spreading around the globe. This 40-year-old neoliberal assault on the New Deal has been defined by these trends, and this ruling ideology oversaw the greatest upward redistribution of wealth in the history of the country, largely, of course, on the backs of working class and the poorest and most vulnerable among us. And in this ideology that has ruled us, in this world upside down, this morally bankrupt logic, the government's only job, it seemed, was to create optimal conditions for corporate profit, to privatize everything in sight and sell off every inch of the Commonwealth, maximize corporate profit at all costs. It'd be a perfect system if there were no human beings. But as Bernie told us, those free markets, well, they ain't so free. But corporate welfare was alive and well. The system seems to be socialize the risk, privatize the profit. A social contract based on fear, cruelty, and greed. Like the gangsters in the movie say, screw you, pay me. The whole deadly political circus is about greed. And in this movement, we honestly admit that unchecked, deregulated capitalism is the issue. Class is the issue. Now, runaway inequality has created a world where 62 people own as much wealth as the poorest half of the world's population. And you know what? Bernie saw it all coming. Saw it all a mile away. And I guess this is a long-winded way of getting to the point. In the age of Twitter and 2-second histories, Bernie Sanders has been saying what has only till recently been fashionable for 40 years. He saw it and he said it from jump, and he said it for decades when he was greeted with ridicule, hostility, and scorn. This is what makes him prophetic. He has the vision and the depth to deal with the problems we face because he brings a lifetime of experience to the table. He's literally put his body and his soul and his integrity on the line for us his whole life. And today, Bernie is by far the most popular politician in America, right? And the good news is, I don't know if you've heard about it, but this same man, the guy with the future in his eyes, filled with the spirit and the compassion, the fierce love for his fellow brothers and sisters, that same gentleman happens to be leading a revolutionary movement that is unprecedented, truly, in American history. But we got to take back that meaning of the word revolution. It's not a Nike commercial or a can of soda. It's not a brand. Bernie Sanders is talking about a radical redistribution of economic and political power. He's talking about a real revolution, not top down, but bottom up. And the billionaire class are getting very, very nervous. And all the corporate media is against us. And it seems like every conceivable power structure is trying to kill or derail our movement. But we're still here. Because we know that the unchecked greed of predatory capitalism takes and takes whatever, whenever, however it wants. And it will take everything. It'll take our lives, our labor, our spirits, our air, water, and even our earth. Bernie respects us enough to tell us the hard truth. We have a 10 to 12-year window to radically transform our energy system, or climate change and predatory capitalism and the endless war economies will rob us of a right to any future at all. And as we see every day, the house is literally on fire. But as Bernie tells us, this is no time for despair. There's no time for anything but action. If we stand together with him, the future is truly unwritten. And there's nothing more powerful than a movement whose time has come. Now, just to keep in your mind, we have never, ever had a movement candidate this close to power with a revolutionary movement he's led and built that's ready to go with him all the way to change the country and help heal the world. We've never had that. When people of every race, faith, and gender, when we all stand together in solidarity, when all of us whose labor powers the economy stop the profiteering and say no more and tell the billionaires and the corporate tyrannies it's time to start treating all human beings with respect and dignity. To name just a few examples, Medicare for all, healthcare as a human right, public colleges and universities tuition free, canceling student debt, medical debt relief, guaranteeing a living wage, and most crucially, transforming the economy with the Green New Deal, which will be, by necessity and fact, the biggest economic transformation of the United States since World War II. So, has the world caught up to Bernie's moral vision? It's up to us. But there are encouraging signs. I don't know if you've noticed, but the corporate media, they kind of hate us. Well, they pretended like they hated us, then they ignored us, and then now they just seem really confused. Wall Street hates us. Drug companies hate us. Insurance companies hate us. The military-industrial complex hates us. And the 1% of the 1%, they hate us. They don't really hate. They fear us. And you want to know why? We're going to take on their greed and corruption, and we're going to win. And we're going to make a more just and humane and decent America. Now, let me ask you a question. What is 100% minus 1%? I like our chances. Anyway, thank you all so much. And I would like to introduce to you a woman who needs no introduction, but she is, I think, as visionary a thinker, a speaker, and a mind as Bernie Sanders. And I can't think of anybody that I'm prouder to call a friend than Naomi Klein. Thank you.
Wow. Are you feeling fiery? Are you going to win New Hampshire for Bernie? You know, as Johnny said, our world is on fire. We need to be on fire too. And this movement truly is. The movement that you have all built together. It is such a beautiful thing. You know, I think when we first heard this phrase, not me, us, it seemed to mean something simple, right? Bernie was saying, I can't do this on my own. I can't take on all of these forces that John just listed for us on my own. If we think they're against Bernie now, just wait till he wins. You know, the bankers tried to stage a coup against FDR in this country. They actually did. So this movement needs to build, and it needs to stay organized and mobilized. And that is a big part of that idea of not me, us. It is part of what won the original New Deal, that mobilization on the outside that was shutting down cities and ports, staging general strikes, sit-downs in the auto factories. It was that pressure that frightened the elites enough to offer the original New Deal as a compromise. And with the Green New Deal, we're going to finish the job. if we're just kind of sort of in favor of it. We are going to win it if we are willing to fight for it, if we are on fire for it. Now that idea, not me, us, I think it's gotten bigger than just being about whether or not, we think a single candidate or even a president can fix the world for us. As I spend time in this remarkable campaign, I feel something else. I feel like this slogan is really about a shift in values that this campaign embodies. It is about people reaching for real solidarity with one another, trying to escape the culture of individualism that this crazy economic system has imposed upon us, and this idea of everybody being their own atomized, individualized, self-promoting brand on social media, just looking out for themselves and blaming themselves and feeling isolated and alone. And this movement, this campaign is offering people a way out of that and to find strength in community and realize that we are so much more when we act together, right? That is what we are going to carry with us, and that is the kind of transformation that is actually going to win the Green New Deal that we need to keep ourselves safe, our kids safe, and win a future that isn't just better than some apocalyptic Hollywood movie of climate and ecological breakdown that we've all seen 20 times, but it's better than Tuesday because people have health care and they have access to education and they have clean air and water and they have good unionized jobs, and people are going to fight like hell for a future like that. So, in 2018, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the UN panel that brings together the leading climate scientists, thousands of climate scientists together to tell governments a sort of synthesis of the best science that is out there, which actually makes it kind of conservative because they have to get so many scientists to agree on anything before it comes out. They came out with a report in October 2018 about how we need to keep temperatures, to keep warming of the planet below 1.5 degrees Celsius. We've warmed the planet already by 1 degree Celsius, and we are already seeing the unraveling of our natural systems, like the fires in Australia, the flooding in Indonesia, and of course the staccato superstorms that we have seen in this country, and the wildfires in the West, and the heat waves that you've experienced here in New Hampshire, and the kind of threats that you face economically, because this is an economy that depends in part on winter tourism. So this is all happening a lot faster than they predicted. And they said we have to keep warming levels below 1.5. But if we want a good shot at doing that, we need the whole global economy to cut emissions in half in 12 years. So that was 2018. So if I'm correct, I believe we are now at 2020, which is an exciting year, but it is also a scary year. So we now have, when a new government takes office, a decade to achieve, and these scientists said what it would take to lower emissions that quickly. They said it would require unprecedented transformation in virtually every aspect of society. Agriculture, energy, transportation, building infrastructure. Do you know any other candidate who is running a campaign based on the need for a fundamental transformation of virtually every aspect of society? Anyone other than Bernie Sanders? Because we know this system is in crisis with or without climate change, right? So we have this decade, which is terrifying, 1 decade to change everything. But we also have, as John just told us, this opening, this historic lifeline This has never happened in my lifetime. We have never gotten so close to power with a true movement-rooted candidate who has been with us for so long. We have to reach for that with absolutely everything we have. We cannot lose. As Nina Turner says, all that we love is on the line. All that we love is on the line. You know, I know there are some terrific activists in this room here who fought a pipeline here in New Hampshire, a Kinder Morgan pipeline, and won. You know, and in other parts of the country, they stopped the Keystone XL pipeline, then the Dakota Access pipeline only. Yes. But if you think about these victories that we had during the Obama years, it was, you know, for little incremental improvements and just trying to keep things from getting worse, right? We need something of a different order, and that's what a Green New Deal is. And we need to understand that it is guided by science, guided by the science that I just cited, and it is also governed by justice. It says, if we're going to change everything about the building blocks of our society, why wouldn't we make it fairer on every front? Why wouldn't we fight systemic racism, systemic gender exclusion? Why wouldn't we make sure that the communities that have borne the toxic burden of our addiction to fossil fuel, communities of color, immigrant communities, indigenous communities, they need to be first in line to own and control their own renewable energy. And this is not, because guess what? We don't want Exxon and Shell to sell us renewable energy. Some of us want to try them for crimes against humanity, but we most certainly want to hold them criminally responsible for knowing about this crisis well before even a young Bernie Sanders was raising the alarm back in the 80s. They were doing research in the 70s proving a direct connection between their product and the warming of our planet, and yet they spent decades lying and deceiving the public and fighting every attempt to respond to this crisis. We will hold them accountable, and we will have clean, renewable energy, 100% of it owned and controlled by your communities, keeping the jobs, skills, and profits in your communities. So listen, I'm not going to take up much more time because the man himself is back there, and let me tell you, he is on a roll tonight. You know, we all know that some of us in the campaign, we like to dig up old videos of Bernie Sanders, right? It's something of a hobby. The kids on TikTok love it. And, you know, these videos, I think they mean different things to different people, right? And John's just talked a little bit about it. You know, they show us that he's known for so long, right? They show us that he is rooted in our movements and has been for so many decades. They remind us, and I think this is really important, when we think about how much we have to get done in a decade, that we are part of revolutionary traditions in this country, that our movements have been working, the women's movement, the racial justice movements, the labor movement. We have been working too often in our silos, right? Now we need to bring this work together into a coherent plan for the next economy. But these videos remind us that we have that tradition to draw on. We aren't starting from scratch. But there's something else there. You know, I think sometimes some of our critics think that we're trying to gloat or something like that, right? Trying to score points against Joe Biden, who has a few less flattering videos out there, let's just say. But the truth is, there's no joy in being right about climate change or disastrous wars or entirely foreseeable economic meltdowns. There is only sorrow. In fact, think for a moment what our world would look like if Bernie Sanders had been listened to over these past 4 decades. if he had been believed? How much of the richness of our natural world would be preserved if he had been listened to? The species saved from extinction, the glaciers and coral reefs still standing. Think of the military coups and wars that could have been prevented. Think of what daily life would look like if we had introduced Medicare for all. How many families would have been saved from medical bankruptcy? Think about if we had listened to him when he said, let's not create the Department of Homeland Security and ICE along with it. Think of the immigrant communities who wouldn't have been terrorized in that way. The point of all of this is not to say, we told you so. But there is a responsibility in knowing that we were right. There is a grave responsibility. And we have to be clear that our elites, the supposed serious adults in the room, cannot be trusted with our collective future. They will let it burn for money. Our entire planet hangs in the balance of what we do or do not do in the coming year. If Bernie was right about what we should have done 30 years ago, let's believe that he is right about what we need to do for the next 30 years. Let's believe that we can have a Green New Deal that will get our emissions down to zero. Let's believe that we deserve a leader like that. Let's believe that we deserve Bernie Sanders. Screw being right. This time we win. Thank you, friends.
Please welcome to the stage President of SEA-SEIU Local 1984, Rich Gullah.
Good evening, everyone. Can you feel the burn? I say, can you feel the burn? One more time, can you feel it? Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Gullah, and I am president of the State Employees Association, SEIU Local 1984. We represent over 15,000 state, county, and municipal employees here in New Hampshire. And I'm very proud to say that on Monday, we endorsed Senator Sanders for President of the United States. In a little over 3 weeks, we here in New Hampshire are going to ignite a spark that is going to burn across this country and change it forever. We are going to elect Senator Sanders President of the United States. Imagine a country with health care for all. Imagine a country with that new Green Deal that our children and grandchildren will live in a healthy environment, but doing so with good union-paying jobs. Senator Sanders has not just been talking the talk his life, but walking the walk. One of the reasons why our local endorsed Senator Sanders is he took time out of his busy schedule campaigning this year to give words of encouragement to not yet unionized workers that we were trying to organize in Rockingham County. And I am proud to say that they decided to vote and become members of our local. Unfortunately, they still haven't been able to negotiate a contract yet. But Senator Sanders has a plan for that. He wants to make it easier for them. He wants to make it so that 50% of people that work in a unit plus one get to form a union without having to have an election. That's right. Damn right. The other thing the center wants to do is make it a more of a playing field for everyone. Right now, the state employees are locked in contract negotiations with the state. The governor does not want to negotiate fairly. Right. A mere 4% raise, barely a cost of living increase, and he's standing in the way for that with our state employees. Senator Sanders wants to change that. He wants to penalize employers that don't want to play fairly. Isn't that great? It is great. And I think it's a great thing that Senator Sanders stands for labor. That's why we support Senator Sanders. That's why we're all here. That's right, power to the people. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to now introduce to you the next President of the United States, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. Thank you, Manchester. All right. Whoa. Thank you. Thank you. So I am glad to see a little bit of snow does not intimidate those of us from northern New England, right? We're kind of used to the cold weather and the ice and the snow. But thank you all very much. Thank you very much for coming out. Let me thank Jake Swamp and the Pine for their music. Let me thank John Fishman, who's with the Fish. You all know the Fish. It's a good Vermont band. Let me thank Andrew Valinsky for all the work he does in education here in New Hampshire. Let me thank Janice Kelby with the American Postal Workers Union. And those are the folks who are out every day, even in weather like this. Let me thank John Cusack for all that he does. You know, John, as you know, is a great actor, but he is using his fame to talk about the issues that are important to working families, and we thank him very much for his support. Let me thank my old friend, Naomi Klein. Naomi has been way out in front as a writer on so many issues, not least of which helping to lead the fight against climate change. So Naomi, thank you so much for what you do. And I want to thank Rich Gullo and the New Hampshire State employees for their support. You know, it is state employees who are out tonight making sure that the roads are safe, who perform a lot of the vital services that keep New Hampshire, Vermont, or any state going. So we thank Rich and the union for their support. Let me tell you what you already know, that in a few weeks, there is going to be an enormously important primary here in New Hampshire. Some of you may have heard about that. We think we are going to do very well in the first caucus state, which is Iowa, which is a beautiful state. We think with your help, we can win here in New Hampshire. And if we win Iowa and New Hampshire, I think we stand a great chance to win in Nevada. I think we're strong there. I think we're going to do very well in South Carolina. I think we're going to win California. And many of the other states on Super Tuesday. And if we do all of that, we will have accomplished something never done in the modern history of America, and that is put together an unprecedented political revolution. And then, when we win the nomination, with your help, we are going to defeat the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. Now, all of you are aware that my schedule has kind of changed a bit. There is an impeachment trial coming up starting on Tuesday. And I swore an oath of duty as a United States Senator, so I'm going to be there as part of the jury. What that means is we had to change our schedule around a lot. I had hoped to be in Iowa, hoped to be in New Hampshire, but I'm going to have to be in Washington, D.C. Now, the message of our campaign is just that. It is us, not me, and I want to talk about that in a moment. But if there was ever a time when us, not me, was relevant, it is going to be in the next 3 weeks. We need your help big time to win here in New Hampshire. So please come out to vote at the primary. Bring your friends and families and co-workers. And I want to say another word about my gratitude toward New Hampshire, and it's not personal. It's, I think, the nation's gratitude. 4 years ago, when I was here in Manchester and all over this state, we talked about ideas that the political establishment and the economic establishment and the media establishment told us were extreme, they were radical, the American people would never support these ideas. But we came here to New Hampshire and we won a huge victory. So what that said to people all across this country is those ideas are not so radical. They are what working families want. And after winning here in New Hampshire, we proceeded to win 21 other states, 13 million votes. And why that is important is that when people all across the country learned that New Hampshire was willing to stand up for ideas that were so important for working families, those ideas became, quote unquote, less radical and more acceptable. So over the last 4 years, on issue after issue, because of the help we received here in New Hampshire, in Iowa and other states, ideas that a few years ago were seemingly radical and extreme are now not only mainstream, they're ideas that many of my Democratic competitors have adopted. Nelson Mandela, you all know Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela spent decades in jail, in hard labor, fighting against apartheid in South Africa. And he left jail to become president of that country. He said a profound statement. He said, everything seems impossible until it happens. You got that? Everything seems impossible until it happens. What does that mean? What it means is that every day the establishment in 1,000 different ways tells you, don't think big. It can't happen. We can't join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all. We can't do that. We can't make public colleges and universities tuition free. We can't do that. You got to think little, think small. Don't take on the big money interests who dominate our economy and our political life. That's too hard. It can't be done. Well, if Nelson Mandela could come out of jail to become president of South Africa, we can, in fact, take on the establishment and transform this country. So what this campaign is about is asking you to think outside of the box. Don't accept the options that members of Congress or the media tells you. Think bigger than that. Take a hard look at what is going on in this country. I learned a long time ago that it is more important to ask the right questions than to give the right answers. The questions are more important. Question. We claim to be a democracy, but are we a true democracy when billionaires can buy elections? That is why together we're going to overturn Citizens United. That is why we're going to end voter suppression in this country. If you are 18 years of age or older, you're going to vote in America, and no one is going to stop your right to do that. And by the way, we're going to move toward public funding of elections so that any of you who want to run for office, you want to run for governor, you want to run for senate, you want to run for president, whatever you want to run for, you should not have to be dependent on wealthy campaign contributors to do that. And we're going to win this election and the nomination because we have the strongest grassroots movement of any campaign. And I'll give you an example. Of what I mean. Right now, you got some candidates out there, Trump, of course, but even people on the Democratic side, raising huge amounts of money from billionaires, very wealthy people. Our campaign has revolutionized how you do campaign finance in this country. And I'm enormously proud to tell you that in this campaign up to now, we have received over 5 million contributions from over 1.4 million people. And you know what the average contribution is? You guys are smart, $18.50. And here's what really I am enormously proud of, and all of you should be proud of. No campaign in the history of the United States of America has received more contributions from more people at this point in a campaign than we have. That's a political revolution. And I want to thank, and part of the political revolution, it's not just money. It is the kind of volunteer network that we have from coast to coast. Right here in New Hampshire, we have people in the cold knocking on doors. We're knocking on many, many, many thousands of doors. And I want to thank all of you for doing that. Because at the end of the day, you know, we're putting ads on television and radio and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you know what the most important thing you can do politically? You can start talking to people you know, one-to-one, and talk about why we need not only to defeat Trump, but to transform this country. So what the campaign is about is taking on a corrupt political system, but it is also about taking on a rigged economy. And I want you to hear this right now. You know, Trump and his friends talk about how great the economy is doing. Please understand that right now in America, half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. Now, I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. You don't know what that means? Yeah, of course you do, because half of you are living paycheck to paycheck. And what that means, just to give you examples, you know, your car breaks down. That happens, right? Cost you $500 to get your car repaired. Well, what happens if you don't have the $500? You can't get to work. You can't get to work. You get fired. You get fired, how are you going to take care of your family? Living paycheck to paycheck means that if you get sick or your kid gets sick and you don't have money in your pocket, how do you go to the doctor? You don't. And you just pray that your kid or you are not seriously ill. That's called living paycheck to paycheck. So what we believe that in the United States of America, in the year 2020, in the richest country in the history of the world, half of our people should not be forced to live paycheck to paycheck. We are going to create an economy that works for all, not just the 1%. Now, what does that mean? Specifically, what does an economy, and I want you to think about this. Right now in New Hampshire, you got a lot of people working 11, 12 bucks an hour. I talk to those people almost every day. People can't make it on 11 or 12 bucks an hour. They can't afford, they can't get by after paying 40, 50% of their limited income on housing. Can't afford childcare. If you're an older worker, you might be one and a half of older workers in America. You know how much money they have in their pocket as they await retirement? They got nothing in their pocket. Imagine being 55, 60 years of age. You're going to be retired in 5 years. You got nothing in your pocket in order to be prepared for retirement. That is why there is so much economic anxiety. But while the working families of this country are struggling, there is another reality out there, and that is that the wealthy have never had it so good. We have more income and wealth inequality in America today than at any time since the 1920s. It is obscene, it is grotesque, it is unfair. You got 3 people, 1, 2, 3, who own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. You got that? 3 people here, 160 million people over here. That is wrong. And when we are in the White House together, we are going to address that grotesque level of income and wealth inequality. And by the way, one of the scandals that exists under the Trump administration is you have very, very wealthy people who pay an effective tax rate that is lower than what you pay. You got major corporations like Amazon making billions of dollars a year in profit, do not pay a nickel in federal income tax. And whether those people like it or not, under our administration, they will start paying their fair share of taxes. And what does a fair economy mean? What does an economy based on the needs of working families mean? It means that if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. That's not a radical idea. So what we're going to do is raise the federal minimum wage to at least 15 bucks an hour. What we are going to demand and implement is that women no longer make 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. Equal pay for equal work is not a radical idea. As Rich Gullah said a moment ago, we are going to make it easier for workers to join unions so they can negotiate good wages. We are going to create millions of good-paying jobs by putting people to work at union-level wages, by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our water systems, our wastewater plants. And when we talk about an agenda that works for working families, we need to take a very hard look at the way we do education in America today. All right, I'll give you some examples. Everybody here knows that 0 through 4 are the most important years of intellectual and emotional development for a human being. That's what all the psychologists tell us. And yet, despite that, we have a child care system in America that is wildly dysfunctional and inadequate. It is not too much to ask that in the wealthiest country on earth, we have high quality, universal, affordable child care for all of our kids. couple of months ago, I met with some educators here in New Hampshire. And what they were telling me, there are school districts in New Hampshire where teachers who are just beginning are making less than $29,000 a year. We are going to rethink and reprioritize education in America. I believe that people who are working with our kids, our teachers, our child care workers, are doing some of the most important work in this country. They deserve to be paid wages commensurate with that work. And that is why we will move to make sure that no teacher in America makes less than $60,000 a year. Now, the point that I'm trying to make is that these ideas, which seem to be so radical, many of my opponents are saying, oh, Bernie, it's too much. We can't pay teachers a living wage. We can't make public colleges and universities tuition free. Really? That's exactly what we intend to do. How many people in this room are dealing with student debt right now? Holy moly. Anybody not dealing with student debt is the right. All right, now here's thinking outside of the box. 11 years ago, against my vote, Congress bailed out the crooks on Wall Street, gave them trillions of dollars of zero interest loans, etc. 2 years ago, Congress, against my vote under Trump, gave $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1% and large profitable corporations. If we can give tax breaks to billionaires, you know what we can do? We can cancel all student debt in this country. And we're going to pay for that through a modest tax on Wall Street speculation. I have been all over this country, spending a whole lot of time talking about the crisis in healthcare. We have many, many meetings right here in New Hampshire, all across this country. And this is what people are telling me. People are telling me they cannot afford the outrageous cost of healthcare in America. They are telling me they're sick and tired of being ripped off by the greed and corruption of the drug companies. They are asking me, how does it happen that in our great country we are the only major nation on earth that doesn't guarantee health care to all as a human right? So here in a nutshell is the story about health care. And what that story is, that we now spend, I want everybody to hear this, twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other country. Twice as much. Now you would think that if we spend twice as much, my God, everybody in America would have the greatest health care in the world, right? Because spending a fortune. Here's what you're getting for spending $11,000 for every man, woman, and child in this country. What you are ending up with 87 million Americans who are uninsured or underinsured. You are ending up with a grotesque situation where 30,000 people die each year because they don't get to a doctor on time. Next time you go to the doctor's office, ask your doctor how many people have come into that office too late to be saved. And the reason they don't go in, they don't have any health insurance, they can't afford it. We are a nation, despite spending so much, I want you to hear this because this is really beyond cruel. Some 500,000 Americans go bankrupt every year because of medically related bills. Can you imagine that? In other words, if people, somebody here says, I got involved in a business venture, it failed, I went bankrupt. We can understand that. Or I bought a house that I couldn't afford, went bankrupt, couldn't afford that. Went to a casino, blew all my money, went bankrupt. I understand that. People should not go bankrupt because they are struggling with cancer. That is disgusting. Now, this issue of universal health care, not something that I invented. Truth is that for 100 years in this country, way back to the time of Teddy Roosevelt, people talked about health care as a human right. So you've got to think now, how does it happen that people like Teddy Roosevelt, a good Republican as a matter of fact, Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the 30s and 40s, Harry Truman, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Jimmy Carter, Barack Obama, how come we have talked about health care for all for over 100 years, and yet we have the dysfunctional system that exists today? And I will tell you the answer. The answer is a very simple one. It is the greed and the power of the healthcare industry. That is the answer. The answer is that last year, the healthcare industry, and I'm talking about the insurance companies and the drug companies, they made $100 billion in profit. And they will spend as much money as it takes to keep those profits. But what we are saying to the drug companies, who in some cases charge us 10 times more for the same drugs as they charge people in Canada or in other countries, we're saying to the drug companies, and I know this state has been hit really hard by the opioid epidemic, correct? You guys have been really, Vermont has been hit hard. You've been hit a lot worse. Understand that the lawsuit that the state's attorneys general are involved in right now, which is asking for tens of billions of dollars from the opioid manufacturers, that lawsuit is based on the fact that these drug companies knew exactly what their product was doing. They knew that their product was causing addiction and death. And you know what they did when they learned it? They hired more salespeople to go out and sell more product. That is what we're dealing with in terms of the greed and the corruption in the pharmaceutical industry. So whether they like it or not, our view is that the function of healthcare is to provide quality care to all, not to make billions in profits for the drug companies and the insurance companies. Now, you're going to hear a lot of disinformation about Medicare for all because we are threatening the profits of the drug companies and the insurance companies. There'll be ads on television, ads in the newspapers, you name it. So let me tell you very briefly what Medicare for all means and how we're going to go forward. Number one, we are going to eliminate, and this is not a radical idea. This exists in countries all over the world. It exists right there in Canada, our neighbor. We are going to eliminate all premiums. You and your employer are not going to have to pay premiums. We are going to eliminate all co-payments. So when you go to the doctor, you don't have to worry about coming up with the $100 that you need. Now, this system is so dysfunctional that there is a concept out there that many of us, we take for granted, but it is totally insane. And that is the concept of deductibles. You would think that when you pay a fortune for health insurance, okay, it costs me a fortune, I got to go to the doctor when I want. Not really. Because there are people in this room who have a $5,000 deductible, some may have a $10,000 deductible, some may have a deductible even more than that. So that means despite paying for insurance, you still can't go to the doctor if you don't have money in your pocket. That, brothers and sisters, is an insane concept. We're going to eliminate all deductibles. We are going to eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses. We are going, because we're going to lower drug prices in this country. Nobody under Medicare for All will be forced to pay more than $200 a year for the prescription drugs that they need. Furthermore, Medicare is the most popular health insurance program in this country, but it is not perfect. What we are going to do is expand Medicare to cover dental care, to cover hearing aids, eyeglasses, and something that is enormously important for a whole lot of people who are older or have disabilities. People want to stay in their own homes rather than have to go into a nursing home. Medicare for All covers home health care. What we do, which is not complicated, it is the simplest way to bring universal health care. In our first year, we expand Medicare. We lower the eligibility age from 65 down to 55. Next year down to 45. Next year down to 35. Following year, everybody is in. And what that means, you're going to have a little card. You go to any doctor you want, the same doctor you're going to now. You go to any hospital you want, any clinic you want. You do whatever you want to do. The only difference is you're not going to have to pay anything. You're not going to have to take out your wallet. You're not going to have to take out your credit card, because Medicare for All is funded through public resources. So we're shifting how we pay for Medicare for all. Right now, how do we pay for health care? You know how we pay for health care. You're paying through it through premiums, co-payments, out-of-pocket expenses, outrageous cost of prescription drugs. So what we do is all of that is gone, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that healthcare is free. You know, we don't have to pay for it. You do. But what we do is we have another proposal. We put a lot of increased taxes on the wealthy and corporate world, but for working families, the most important thing to know is that on our proposal, people will pay 4% of their income, exempting the first $29,000. So what does that mean? The average family in America makes about $60,000 a year. If you exempt the first $29,000, you're paying 4% of $31,000, which is about $1,200 a year for comprehensive health care. Pretty good deal. Right now, that average family, and you all know this is true because you're paying it, that average $60,000 a year family is paying about $12,000 a year for health care, 20% of their income. Some of you are paying more than $12,000 a year, and you can't afford it. So what we need to do is guarantee health care to all as a right, make it comprehensive, and come up with a fair and progressive way to fund it. Now, the other reason we can do this is not only are we going to end the profiteering of the drug companies and the insurance companies, that's $100 billion. What we do is end the administrative absurdity of having thousands of different health insurance plans in this country that people, doctors and hospitals have got to administer. So you have a $5,000 deductible, you have no deductible, you have a $10,000, you go to this network, you're in that network, you're covered with this prescription drug, you're covered with that. We are wasting hundreds of billions of dollars a year trying to administer that system. So what we are proposing here, what my legislation is about, is not radical. It is the right thing to do. It's to say that health care, regardless of your income, is a human right. We're going to fund it in a fair and progressive way, and we are not going to allow our system to be designed to make huge profits for the CEOs of the drug companies and the insurance companies. That's what we're talking about. Now, I want to touch for a moment on an issue that as human beings, we cannot afford to push under the rug or ignore. And I want to thank Naomi Klein for her incredible work on this issue. And that is the issue of climate change. All right, now here is the story, and I'm not going to lie to you, because this is scary stuff. And I wish I could tell you that I could snap my fingers as president and make everything terrific. Can't. But this is the reality of where we are, and this is where I think we have got to go. Number one, scientists have been telling us for decades that climate change is real, that it is caused by human activity, that it is already causing devastating problems in our country and around the world. Everybody, all the scientists knew that. But what they are now telling us, which is the scary part, is that they have underestimated the degree and severity and speed in which climate change is wreaking havoc in our country and around the world. In other words, the polar ice caps are melting at a faster rate than they had anticipated. Ocean is warming at a faster rate than they had thought. The result will be rising sea levels, which means if we don't get our act together, that by the end of this century, when the planet Earth is 7-8 degrees Fahrenheit warmer, cities like Miami Beach, Charleston, South Carolina, New Orleans, Louisiana, New York City, and many others will be partially or significantly underwater. Countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh, significant parts of China will be underwater. What they are telling us is that we will have more drought, which means, among many other things, that farmers will have shorter growing seasons, unable to produce the quantity of food the planet needs, and in fact, the quality of the food will deteriorate because of the heat. What they are telling us is there will be more extreme weather disturbances. All of you saw a few months ago, Venice, Italy, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, underwater. Houston, Texas, underwater because of torrential rainfall. Anticipate, if we do not act boldly, more of that, more severe storms. And with drought, by the way, what is going on in Australia right now, which looks like the apocalypse. I mean, it is horrible. A beautiful country basically burning. California, we saw the terrible fires that took place. I went to Paradise, California last year. My God, it's a city of like town of 25,000 people, 86 people killed, thousands of buildings burned, $14 billion in damage in Paradise, California. What we're talking about when the ocean warms is that fish will die. People will not be able to get the protein they get today from fish. What we're talking about, according to the United Nations, is over 100 million climate refugees. People forced to leave their communities because they can't find water to drink or land to grow their crops. And if you have 100 million people on the march, the result will be significant international crises. That's not me, that's what the Department of Defense of this country and the CIA tell us. That is what we have to look forward to unless we have the courage to take on the fossil fuel industry, the courage to tell the fossil fuel industry to stop the lies, the truth is the fossil fuel industry has known for decades. Their scientists are not dumb. They know exactly what has been going on, and they have lied about it. But our job is to tell them that the future of our planet for our kids, and I have 7 beautiful grandchildren, that the future of this planet and for future generations is much more important than their short-term profits. And that is what this struggle is about. But to make this problem even more difficult is that if America, if we did the right thing and we transformed our energy system tomorrow, it's still not going to solve the problem. because we have a global problem, not just an American problem. So what I am telling you tonight, that as President of the United States, unlike Donald Trump, who doesn't even recognize the problem, I will do everything humanly possible to rally people all over the world, in Russia, in China. And here is a radical vision. Don't know that I can make it happen, but together we've got to try. At this pivotal moment, when we're fighting for the future of this planet, for our future generations, maybe, just maybe, we can rally the world to understand that instead of spending $1.8 trillion a year on weapons of destruction, maybe we should pool our resources and fight our common enemy, which is climate change. The proposal that I have introduced is the most sweeping, comprehensive climate change proposal ever offered by any federal candidate, and I'm very proud that for that we have the support of the Sunrise organization. The young people are doing a great job. And what our proposal is about, based on the principles of the Green New Deal, is to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. That means transforming agriculture. It means transforming our transportation system. It means massive investments in retrofitting older buildings to make them more energy efficient. It means investing very, very significantly in wind, solar, geothermal, and other sustainable energy. It means investing heavily in research and development to figure out how we can come up with energy systems that are sustainable and are not destroying the planet. So this is an issue that we cannot run away from. I have been criticized by opponents who say, well, Bernie, you know, you're spending a whole lot of money. And the truth is, we are. But how much is too much when we are playing for the future of this planet? That's right. And by the way, when we talk about the Green New Deal, which is the only blueprint, I think, that is capable of addressing this problem, it means that we're going to be able to create up to 20 million good-paying union jobs. When we talk about an agenda that speaks to the needs of working families and low-income people, we must address the broken and racist criminal justice system which exists right now. Today, we have more people in jail than any other country on earth, including China, 4 times our size. People in jail are disproportionately African American, Latino, and Native American. What we have got to do, in my view, is to get to the root causes here, and that means investing in our young people in jobs and education, not more jails and incarceration. Tonight, if you can believe it, and a lot of people don't know this, 400,000 people in America, about 20% of those people in jail, have not been convicted of anything. Do you all know that? What they are in jail for, they've been charged with a crime, they've been arrested, they can't afford bail. So what we have is virtually a debtor prison in America. We're going to end cash bail. We are going to end private prisons and detention centers. It is not morally right for corporations to be making money by locking up fellow Americans. And I'll tell you what else we're going to do, which is a very big deal. We are going to end the so-called war on drugs. Here's a question. How many people here know somebody who was arrested for possession of marijuana? Raise your hand. There you go. We are going to legalize marijuana in every state in this country. We are going to expunge the records of those who were arrested for possession of marijuana. And when marijuana is legal all across this country, we are not going to allow just a handful of corporations to control the industry. We are going to invest in those communities that have been hit the hardest through the war on drugs, the African American community, Latino, Native American communities, and help them start the businesses they need to make money out of the legalization of marijuana. And when we talk about broken and racist systems, it's not just criminal justice, it is immigration as well. So here is a promise. On my first day in office, we will rescind all of the racist immigration executive orders of Donald Trump. And in their place, you know, Trump does a lot of disgusting and outrageous things, but I think one of the worst things that he does on a long list of terrible things is to demonize the undocumented in this country. I am the son of an immigrant, somebody who came to this country from Poland at the age of 17, couldn't speak a word of English, had no money. I have a sense of what the immigrant experience is about. We will end the demonization of the undocumented in this country. On our first day in office, we will reestablish the legal status of the 1.8 million young people and their parents eligible for the DACA program. And we will end the current horrific policies on the southern border. Under our administration, no federal agent will ever grab a baby from the arms of her mother, or lock children up in cages. One of the issues I know that, you know, horrifies us all and is frightening to the kids is this issue of gun violence in America. So let me just say a few words on that. Number one, and most importantly, our gun policy will be determined by the American people, not the NRA. And and we have seen real changes in recent years on people's views on guns in rural states like New Hampshire and Vermont, urban areas like New York City and LA. People are coming together to understand that we need to expand background checks and make them universal. That we should end the so-called gun show loophole. We end the straw man provision. And increasingly, and now I think a pretty solid majority of American people support what they didn't a few years ago. And that is the understanding that we have got to end the sale and distribution of assault weapons in America. You know, I'm a United States Senator, so I'm on the floor of the Senate, and I hear a lot of speeches, which, by the way, is not the most pleasant thing in the world to do. Here, senators have a habit, including myself, of occasionally being a little bit long-winded. But I hear from my Republican colleagues who come to the floor of the House and they give us the conservative mantra is they believe in small government. They believe in getting government off the backs of the American people. We've heard that a few thousand times. And I say to those so-called conservatives, if you believe in getting the government off the backs of the American people, then understand that it is women in this country who must control their own bodies, not politicians. So my promise to you all is that I will never nominate anybody to the Supreme Court or the federal courts who is not 100% pro Roe v. Wade. What our campaign is about, and what makes it a little bit different than other campaigns, is obviously we intend to defeat Donald Trump, the most dangerous president in modern American history. We are, and on this issue, by the way, it's not just progressives who want to beat Trump. You got a lot of moderates and conservatives out there who understand that a president of the United States cannot be a pathological liar. That we cannot have an administration which is corrupt. That we can't have a president who is a racist and a sexist and a homophobe and a xenophobe and a religious bigot. You don't have to be a progressive to understand that that is not what a president is supposed to be about. We can disagree with presidents, but we don't need a president who quite intentionally, for cheap political reasons, is trying to divide us up. We can disagree on policy, but whether you're black or white or Latino, Native American, Asian American, gay or straight, whether you're born in this country, you're an immigrant, we are Americans. And let us go forward together. So this campaign is about defeating Trump. And let me tell you very briefly why I believe that our campaign is best suited, best capable of defeating Trump. It doesn't mean that we are the only campaign. Others can do it as well. And I want to also tell you that in this very hotly contested Democratic primary, I think I can speak for all of my opponents in saying that no matter who wins this thing, and I certainly hope it will be us, but no matter who wins this thing, we will all be united around the winner to defeat Donald Trump. The reason that I think we are best situated to defeat Trump is for a couple of reasons. To defeat Donald Trump, who is going to be a very powerful opponent. To defeat Trump, we are going to need to have the largest voter turnout in American history by far. And that means to create that kind of turnout, you're going to have to bring new people into the political process. You're going to have to bring working people who have over the years become increasingly disillusioned. We're going to have to bring working people in. We are going to have to bring young people into the political process. In every part of our country, we have got to expand our base. And the only way you do that is through a campaign of energy and a campaign of excitement. And the only way you have energy and excitement is when you have the guts to deal with the real issues facing the working class of this country. And if you go to wealthy people's homes and you collect, millions of dollars from the wealthy and from billionaires, people understand. You don't need to have a PhD in political science. People understand you're not going to stand up to the powers that be. So what our campaign is about is building a unprecedented grassroots movement of millions and millions of Americans who are prepared to stand up and fight for justice. And what we mean by justice, what do we mean by justice? This is not complicated. What we mean by justice is economic justice. In the richest country in the history of the world, everybody should be entitled to a decent standard of living. Everybody as a human right is entitled to health care. Everybody, no matter your income, is entitled to a higher education and quality child care. That's economic justice. Social justice, we're going to fight racism and sexism and homophobia wherever we find it and destroy that type of divisiveness. And environmental justice means that we're going to tell corporations to stop polluting our air, our water, and our food, that we're going to take on the fossil fuel industry and transform our energy system. Now, let me be honest with you and tell you that what we are trying to do is unprecedented in the modern history of this country, maybe the overall history, because we're not just running a campaign to defeat an incumbent president. That's not new. It's been done many times. But what we are doing in this campaign is building a grassroots movement to take on not only Trump, to take on Wall Street, to take on the insurance industry, to take on the drug companies, to take on the fossil fuel industry. To take on the military-industrial complex. And to take on the greed of the entire 1%. Now, I'm a senator, and I deal with these guys all of the time, all right? And I don't want to fool anybody here. They have enormous power. Wall Street's 6 banks have assets of over $10 trillion. Fossil fuel industry gets all kinds of subsidies and tax breaks in order to destroy the planet. Military-industrial complex, they got more money than they know how to spend, getting us involved in endless wars. All right? So what I'm telling you here is this is not easy stuff. What we're trying to do has never been done before. It's not just winning an election. I would not be running for president, honest to God, if all it was about beating Trump. It is about transforming this country, okay? And I want to tell you a truth that no other presidential candidate, I believe, will tell you. And that is that no president, not Bernie Sanders or anybody else, can do it alone. Can't do it alone. Do you think I'm going to bring Wall Street into the Oval Office and say, hey, be nice, guys? Have a moral sense of responsibility? Don't think so. They're going to tell the drug companies, stop ripping off the American people? Doesn't happen like that. The only way that change ever takes place, and you all know American history, the only way that real change ever takes place is from the bottom on up, never from the top on down. Think about the labor movement in this country and workers coming together 100+ years ago, taking on their employers, demanding to be treated with respect and dignity as human beings, not as beasts of burden. Think about that struggle. Think about the civil rights struggle and the abomination of slavery and racism, and what Dr. King, whose birthday we're going to be celebrating in 2 days, understood. He couldn't do it alone. He was an organizer bringing millions of people to demand that we end racism in America. Think about the women's movement in this country. Do you think 100 years ago today, women did not have the right to vote? Women were not going to college. Women were not doing the jobs that their heart wanted them to do. But women with their male allies stood up and said, sorry, establishment, you will not define who we are. We will define our own lives. And think about, just in our own lifetimes, the last few decades, think about the struggles of the gay rights movement. 30 years ago, if we were in this room and somebody jumped up and said, you know, Bernie, I think the day will come pretty soon when gay marriage will be legal in every state in this country, nobody in that room would have believed that possible. But it happened because the gay community stood up against homophobia, worked with their straight allies to demand that in America, people have the right to love whoever they wanted, regardless of their gender. And today, all over America, we are seeing young people in the Sunrise Movement and in other environmental groups. The young people, not only in this country, but all over the world. Who do you think is leading the struggle against the dangers of climate change? It is young people standing up by the millions all across this world. So here is what this campaign is about. I'm not saying to you, vote for me and I'm going to solve all the problems. That would not be true. The only way we transform this country is when we do it together. The 1% and the corporate elite are enormously powerful. But at the end of the day, the 1% is 1%. And we are 99%. And if we do not allow Trump and his friends to divide us up by the color of our skin or our sexual orientation or where we were born or our religion, if we stand together around an agenda that works for all of us, we will not only defeat Trump, we will transform this country. Thank you all very much.